Hey guys, Yoshi the Yo-Yo here. Bet you guys are wondering, wow, 3 videos in 1 week? It's almost like you're trying to turn this into a channel to where you can have financial compensation for making people look like fucking idiots. Well, today we're going to have a little discussion about a little conflict that I had in a video comment thread in the channel called The Sound of Science. Sounds interesting. So what is this channel about? Well, clearly it's a channel that is antithetical to the Bible, antithetical to Christianity. Shocker. Now, generally with these types, I don't necessarily care if you like some people. If you don't really believe in God, that's one thing. But when your claims of not believing in God is rather kind of out the ass, it kind of begs the question, where did you get this kind of information from? And it does often do need to be checked. And we're about to go through that today. And as I was having a conversation with one guy, another guy jumps into the conversation, and we start having a lot of back and forths. And with these back and forths, I'm starting to realize that these people are quite in fact white nationalists. And that's not me just using the term haphazardly and drawing it down because, like the left has been abusing the fucking term racist this entire time and people don't believe in it. Like, no, these people actually do have the interpretation of Adolf Hitler when it comes to the interpretation of the Bible through a socialist lens. So anyways, let's get to it. So we have a Mr. Daniel Kaiser 4174, and this is where it actually starts getting kind of weird. And he responds after a little back and forth. Again, I don't hate something I don't believe in, but I can relate its described actions with our standards of morality. Okay? If you don't hate God and if you don't hate Jesus, why are you making fun or throwing ad hominems towards God's Jesus' name? But then down here later on in the other comment response, you'll make fun of Genghis Khan's name, but you'll put respect on Hitler's name. Especially since a large part of the world is delusional and claims this fictional character exists and attributes aspects to it that it doesn't display at all in the myths surrounding it. I don't hate Voldemort nor love Harry Potter, but I do understand which of them is evil and which isn't without thinking they are actually existing entities. However, if a group of simple-minded gits in the near future start claiming that they did and are trying to create a world according to loving, powerful, and present Voldemort, I'd fight them tooth and nail to stop it. So he would stop the Nazis, he says. Keep that in mind, guys. Keep that quote, pin it. I absolutely can. I don't specifically hate Hitler or Genghis Khan either. That's a weird statement to make, considering one was the leader and the person that planned the genocide of 6 million people, of Jews and gypsies and other people that he deemed as subhuman. You should definitely hate that. That's a very weird statement to make. Never met them. Okay, that's weird. How is it you can have respect for Hitler and Genghis Khan by not meeting them, but then when it comes to Jesus, a person that you've never met, you claim that doesn't exist, you can hate him specifically and call him names? That doesn't make any sense. Like right there, you're already contradicting yourself. But I can judge them by their actions. What actions are you judging? And so I can do the same for this biblical genie. Like, again, he's making fun of Jesus, but he's putting respect on Hitler's name. I despise their actions and their motivations, but I know neither personally, as they aren't around to know. So hate is the wrong terminology here. It seems you can't word very well, says the person is putting soft tendencies on Hitler's name. And as I have no idea who Mont and Bailey are or is, I've not employed any tactics of theirs. If they came to a similar conclusion, that is because it's a logical... Wait. This guy doesn't know what a Mont and Bailey is. Yes, I've given you apt explanation as to why they are comparable, and what he means by that is how Hitler and Jesus are comparable. Now, keep in mind, the only people that put these two in the same category are white nationalists. You have yet to address my pointed out similarities. They both are mass murderers who try to wipe out entire groups of people based on their race. They are both dictators. They are both despots. The comparison stands unless you are able to refute said comparison for being inaccurate, which it is inaccurate, and I'm about to get into that. So he's making the argument that because these two are the same, because they both committed genocides, and he's wrong on the whole God committing a genocide part, because God didn't commit genocide because of race. He committed a genocide because the people were sinning. Like cases with like Sodom and Gomorrah, where it's just loaded with like prostitution, sin, robbery, thieving, murdering, etc., etc. God and Hitler are not the same. By saying God and Hitler are the same, you're saying Hitler went to heaven despite the fact committing a mass genocide. Like, you're making that argument for people like Nick Fuentes. I don't retreat, as I clearly address your arguments, unlike vice versa, which that doesn't make any sense because I'm also countering your arguments as well, so that's not really a point, that's not really an argument. You're strawmanning again. You're not really proving that I'm strawmanning, you're just making a statement and not showing where the strawman is. Just because I find someone's actions detestable does not equal me having to hate them. Okay, so because you find Hitler's actions detestable, you don't hate Hitler for genociding the Jews? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And another point I want to point out about the whole he doesn't retreat thing, I wouldn't be boasting on a platform where the notification system goes out its way to make sure that you don't get certain notifications for certain comments that people respond to. That kind of shows how retarded you really are. Boasting on a platform that its notification system is kind of it's not that good. Oh, look, the person didn't respond to what I said, and because he didn't respond to what I said, that means I am the best, and he has no rebuttal, and it clearly has nothing to do with the platform's shit-ass notification system and not letting the person know that this person said something for you to respond to. Like, occasionally, for some reason on my YouTube account settings, it would automatically turn off my notifications for some reason, and I never go into my settings to turn off notifications. But yet somehow my notifications get turned off for some reason. Or I'll get bombarded with like response to notification comments, and some of those notifications just won't show up within the notification timeline. So you really shouldn't be boasting about that. Like, you really should not be boasting about a platform where if I really want to see all the comments in that thread without going to my notifications, I have to go to new comments. Then I have to find your original comment, which if that comment thread had over 1,000 comments, fuck that. And then I have to scroll all through those replies looking for any new notification or any new message that you sent me that I didn't get a notification for. Again, that makes you a bitch. You might be projecting here. Well, the only way that I would be projecting is if I denied the fact that Jesus is a descendant of Abraham, which you have not made that as a fact. There is no Christians, as they aren't a cohesive group. There are about 300 different cults that call themselves Christians. They're not cults, they're denominations. But call each other out for not being real Christians, and are in no way comparable to earliest Christianity. So no, I'm talking about the doctrine itself. That's the same thing Hitler said. No, I shit you not. That is quite literally the same thing Hitler said. Hold on, let me show you. Hitler's public stance on Christian unity. Adolf Hitler publicly claimed to oppose religious conflict between Christian denominations. He emphasized unity among Catholics and Protestants as a part of his political strategy. In 1928 speech, he stated, "We are a people of different religions, but we are one. Which faith conquers, the other is not the question. Rather, the question is whether Christianity stands or falls." And if you understand Hitler, he doesn't really value the spiritual sense of God or Christ. He values the flesh of God and Christ, which is antithetical to Jesus. It's antithetical to God. Because in his evaluation, if the two denominations was based on race, there wouldn't be any conflict between the two denominations of Protestant and Catholic. But if they are of spirit, they're constantly at war at each other. But they're not at war at each other in a unhealthy sense. They're at war at each other in a very healthy, competitive sense, because it keeps them in check with one another to ensure that they are of God's children. Like, you're in the comments section making Hitler's argument while saying you'll stand against Hitler. Not the multitude of different mindless drones following their particular flavor of it. Again, that drives competition, so that ensures that people stay within, God's favor, God's teaching. So that's a pointless argument, which is irrelevant to God being evil or not. Okay, you're doing that kind of pussyfoot kind of thing again, where you're saying, I'm not saying Jesus is evil. I'm not saying I hate him. But then you're evaluating the religion and the denominations and going, because the people in their denominations are fighting each other, it's a bad thing. So clearly, again, you're doing this whole Mont and Bailey kind of thing where it's like, I'm not saying Jesus is evil, but I'm not saying Jesus is evil when I go into the Mont, which is the indestructible fortress. I'm saying God and his existence and everyone trying to follow him is doing things that just destroy each other. And I'm pointing out the Bailey, and I'm pushing the Bailey to show how evil God is. I'm not saying he's evil, guys. I'm just asking questions like Candace Owens. Again, no, I don't care what their political stance is either. I care that their doctrine flows over into politics, regardless if it's right, left, or center. Well, in order for that to actually become a thing, well, they have to give up the spiritual sense and become of the race sense, which means you are quite literally advocating for race Christianity. You are advocating for white Christian nationalism. Stupid reigns supreme by proxy when religion is on the brain. No, it's actually fake-ass ideologies such as atheism and Marxism and socialism and National Socialism and communism is what rots the brain. I'm not the simple-minded person making endless equivocation fallacies here. That is you, but that is not the case, because, again, you're doing that thing where you're saying I'm doing a thing, but you're not pointing out how is it that I'm doing the thing. Yet I'm the one pointing out that you're the one actually doing the thing, and I'm showing how you're doing the thing. You're comparing Hitler to Jesus and saying they're the same being and the same people, simply because they committed quote unquote mass murder or mass genocide. Again, God did not kill those people out of race. He killed those people out of sin. The fact that you think God committed those genocides, those killings out of race, means that you are looking at God as an excuse to justify why you should be killing people out of race. And then this is where the second guy comes in, by the name of Holger Lupski. I cannot pronounce that. 3469. We'll just call him Hall. And he's responding to one of my comments where I say, show me where in the Bible does it say slavery is justified in those exact words. And this is his response. It's hilarious how you Bible babblers have to come out to atheist channels and ask the atheist what is actually written in the book you say is 100% true and that you believe in. No, because I'm asking because you're making a claim saying God says this or God justifies this. And then when people ask you, where does it say within the source that you claim that you have read, it says God justifies slavery, people like you go, what? Oh man, I find it so hilarious that you people who claim to have read the Bible have come to people who don't read the Bible asking, where does it say in the Bible that it justifies the thing that I'm making the claim of? Oh my God, you guys are so hilarious. You made a claim. I am allowed to ask you a question on how you came to the conclusion of the claim that you are presenting. People cannot ask questions in your echo chambers? Guys, I'm just asking questions about why the Jewish cabal is controlling the world. Guys, I'm just making proclamations, right? I'm just making proclamations. There's no reason for you to be asking me questions about proclamations of me dirtying the Bible. You should just shut up and take it. And you want to know what his proof is? The proof that shows God justifies slavery? Here it is. Leviticus 25, verse 44 and 46. Both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, which thou shalt have, shall be of the heathen that are round about you. Of them shall ye buy bondmen and bondmaids. Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them shall ye buy, and of their families that are with you. So you do not separate the families. Apparently this motherfucker wants to separate the families. Which they beget in your land, and they shall be of your possession. And ye shall take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them for a possession. They shall be your bondmen forever. Now, this is the thing you need to be really careful of, right? If you're going to make claims saying that the Bible justifies slavery, you need to understand one thing. If you can't back it up, you're making the same argument as white nationalists. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And here's the counter scripture that completely blows his entire argument out of the water, because this is the thing that he's doing. He's taking these scriptures out of context, and he's acting like because there are certain rules or regulations in regards of owning slaves, therefore God justifies slavery. Keep in mind, what was my demand? My demand was to show me in the Bible, where does it say God justifies slavery? Justifies slavery, not have rules and regulations in maintaining and keeping those slaves away from abusers, because you have to think about it in terms of those times back when slavery was normalized. It was all over the world. And if you were a slave abolitionist, you're the minority. And because you're the minority, you cannot participate in the slavery thing. You have to participate in it. But if you see those slaves as people and you don't see them as lesser than, you would treat them as better. You would treat them as God instructed, because these are instructions by God to keep those people away from slave owners that abuse, rape, and kill them. Which for some reason, this guy, Hal, does not want to address for some reason. And so here's the scripture in question that blows his accusations out of the water. If he goes a couple of scriptures back, it says in 39, if any of your fellow Israelites become poor and sell themselves to you, do not make them work as slaves. They are to be treated as hired workers or temporary residents among you. They are to work for you until the year of Jubilee. Then they and their children are to be released, and they will go back to their own clans and to the property of their ancestors, because the Israelites are my servants. The Jews are what? The Jews are related to God. They are descendants of God. They are descendants of Jesus. Jesus is a descendant of a Jew. Because the Israelites are my servants, whom I brought out of Egypt. They must not be sold as slaves. Do not rule over them ruthlessly, but fear your God. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are going to be at the bottom. But if you go right here in Scripture 44, it says right here clearly, your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. Therefore, we can buy slaves. Christ is king. Christ is king. Christ is king. No, that is not what it means. Because then when you come over here, you can ask any AI. It says here, the permission to purchase servants from other nations serves several purposes. First, it acknowledges the reality of economic and social structures in ancient Near East, where labor was often organized through servitude. That was the norm at that time. However, the servants acquired from foreign nations were not to be treated as mere chattel. The problem with these people who argue against slavery, and it's those two people in that fucking thread and a lot of people like that, is that they combine any and all forms of work as a form of slavery. Even capitalism to them is slavery. So if everything outside of what they believe is slavery, what is not slavery to them? Them owning slaves. Because remember, this is a power game to them. The only thing that matters to a socialist is power, nothing else. They were to be treated with justice and fairness, and their masters were required to rule without harshness. Oh, that's exactly what I said in that thread. The text also indicates that these foreign servants could be integrated into the covenant community, participating in religious practices such as circumcision and the Passover if they identified with Israel's God, aka Jesus. Again, it's exactly what I said in that thread. If you are a slave abolitionist and you are in a society where slavery is the norm and you know that you are the minority and you are outnumbered, you would use your property to participate in the system, but you would treat the slaves in a manner that is better than slave abusers. Their analogy of the Bible being evil is basically calling the pet rescuer an animal abuser, because the pet rescuer uses his or her private property and their resources to care for abused animals. That means they're in the same light as the animal abuser who was beating up on the animals or raping them, God forbid. But, you know, there are some people that do some stuff like that, or force breeding, or, you know, some unethical tendencies that they do on animals. To these people in the thread, the pet rescuer is in the same light as the animal abuser. Now I'm starting to see why he didn't want to acknowledge that as a fact, or is it a correct thing to do? Because it's laced in Jewish tactics. It's laced as a form of Jewry. That's why he doesn't agree with the idea of using your own property. It's because he sees it as a Jewish, like a dirty Jewish thing to do. Imagine this guy claiming to be a hero, claiming that the Bible is evil, but at the exact same time does not want to use his private property to house slaves and to treat them like people because he sees it as a Jewish thing. Keep that in mind. These are the so-called heroes, by the way. And then he responds with a quote, and this doesn't show you, like, when these people quote, they don't know how quotes work, but this is why they quote, because it makes it easier for them to be able to argue around what you're actually saying. So apparently my quote, which is a lot more of this, by the way, and I'll show you, is it would be insurmountable to dismantle. Notice how there's a lot of missing context there. And he claims my confession that my tribal war god is not even close to being all powerful is noted. Now, keep in mind, this guy Hall has said that Jesus is evil, the Bible is evil, and that he is not all powerful, right? Keep that also in mind. Pin it. Now, let me show you what he did to my quote. Let me show you what he did to my comment. This is my comment. You're seeing the word slave and going full leftist without thinking of the world back then. As a minority who is a slave abolitionist, it would be insurmountable to dismantle. So instead, you participate but treat the slaves better than others. When the world is normalized to slavery, slaves that are free is just one man's junk and becomes another man's treasure. He values that. So they can't be free. Your narrow-mindedness is like comparing a pet owner to an animal abuser, because both animals are in cages, while completely obfuscating the pet owner's care of the pet. So they can't be free outside of the care of Israel, outside of the care of Christ, outside of the care of Jesus, outside of the care of God. They can't be safe without that care. But with that care, they can be safe. And with that care and with that safety, they can be freed. He cuts out the part where I said that is a minority who is a slave abolitionist. And then he argues around a selective choice of words that allows him to be able to argue around the Jewish tactic. This guy is a neo-Nazi. Oh, well, Yoshi, you're throwing around a lot of labels. You're just like those leftists that call anybody a neo-Nazi and a racist because they don't get their way. And you're the reason why we're in this state of affairs where we have all this anti-white racism. Unfortunately for you running your fucking egotistical mouth, you actually contradicted yourself. And here's the contradiction. When I said I hate socialism, and your response is, so you hate Jesus, who was the original socialist. Interesting. Hold on a sec. Why are you claiming Jesus as a socialist, and this guy is a socialist, by the way, while also in the same breath saying that the Bible is evil and that Jesus is evil for condoning slavery and justifying slavery? Why is it you do not agree with using your abode and your resources as a safe haven for people that others see as lesser than, to be stored as a safe haven so they can be viewed as actual people? Because you see it as a Jewish thing. You see it as something Jewish. And because you see it as Jewish, you're antithetical against it. But you're not antithetical to power. You're attracted to power. You love power. You love to abuse power. So despite the fact that Jesus is evil in your eyes, you still like to claim him, despite the fact that his Bible justifies slavery, by the way, as a member of your political movement. That is far more interesting than me hating socialism with a legitimate reason. So the only reason why you're saying the Bible is evil is because it's Jewish in nature. So then the question becomes, would that evil dissipate simply because Jesus is painted white? If he's painted black? Whatever skin color you are, and you benefit off of the things that you're calling evil, because I would like to assume, correctly, by the way, that everything you're saying is evil would be justified if you benefited off it in the case that God or Jesus is of your skin color. And then he quotes, again, he keeps doing that half quote thing. How about reading the Bible for yourself? His response, I have read the Bible from cover to cover, which is a lie because, well, he clearly showed it in that Leviticus thing. So he clearly took that out of context in two different translations. I wonder what the other translation is. The white nationalist translation? If you had bothered to do that for yourself, which I have, King James Version, by the way, then you would not be here lying. You're not really proving how I'm lying. You're just saying it about what the Bible says about human slavery, which for some reason you are calling non-chattel slavery slavery. That is not the same thing. You're using slavery as a catch-all term. You're using it as a catch-all term, and creating a dialectical space where even using your own private property to house slaves from abusers is also considered evil. You're just doing the whole thing. Well, you're doing the whole, well, if the Jewish people can get away with it, why can't we argument? Which, if you're the type of people that looks at like the Jews and starts talking about all this pedophilia bullshit, like that honestly says what the fuck you really are too. And once again, you have demonstrated you are a hypocrite when you admonish me to read the Bible for myself. Bah humbug. How am I a hypocrite? You haven't proved anything. You're just saying I'm a liar and a hypocrite, and you don't even prove. Well, of course you don't have to prove it. You're in an echo chamber where you don't really have to prove anything. You just say shit coming out your fucking mouth and everybody sucks you off. And no matter how much I prove how much of a fucking liar you are and how much you contradicted yourself and how much you actually do agree with slavery and how much you do agree with rape, I'm not here to save you. I'm just going to make that abundantly clear. I'm not here to change your mind. I know what type of people you motherfuckers really are. And despite the fact knowing this, I still go out my way to clarify how you're lying, how are you contradicting, and what those contradictions mean when you read between the lines. Again, I don't need to prove anything to you. I'll still prove it. The goal isn't to save you. It's to save normal people from you. Because you're a fucking virus in this society. Then he does another quote tweet, which ain't really a quote, by the way. Again, it's just taking part of a sentence. Where I say, the Bible does not explicitly justify slavery in the modern sense. His response, can we agree to define slavery as one human being owning another human being as property? And my answer is yes, we can agree upon that definition. The problem here is that you use that definition as a catch-all term because you have a black and white dichotomy. Because I'm not arguing in terms of definitions, I'm arguing in terms of intentions. And you keep obfuscating and ignoring the intentions as to why these people were doing this the way they were doing things back then, because it's Jewish related. That's why you're against it. That's why you present a very no exceptions kind of approach to it. Under no exceptions should there be any form of slavery, including capitalism, because you would say capitalism is a form of slavery. But like all matter, it just doesn't disappear. It has to go somewhere. Someone has to own some form of power of that thing. Someone has to own the structure of that power and do something with that power and say, these are the things you should be able to do and these are the things you can't do. So who's going to be responsible for that? Clearly, it can't be you because you're the one that's going to be enforcing chattel slavery. Because you see harboring slaves from slave abusers or people who treat slaves in a very negative manner as a bad thing. So then that must mean you see chattel slavery as a good thing. And then he does another quote. Again, he doesn't know how quotes work. The issue here isn't the definition, it's the intention, obviously. You're obfuscating the intention and saying the sole act itself is evil. You are the one here trying to desperately to obfuscate, and you don't explain how I'm obfuscating. You're just claiming it. Try again. Is owning another human being property immoral? Yes or no question. Try to be honest just one time. Well, I've already explained this earlier, and I explained it 2 to 3 fucking times in the comment thread. It depends on the context of what you mean by owning a person. Because you can say a parent owning their child is evil. Isn't that slavery? That the parent owns their child? A parent doesn't have a right to their child. Okay, so then who has a right to the child? The state? And if the state is responsible for the education of this child, which version of Christianity should he teach? Should he teach my version of Christianity? Or should he teach your version of white national Christianity? I wonder which one you'd pick. Then he quote tweets again. You, as a socialist, sees that as evil and would justify that person stealing from others, which makes you an operative of evil, which is true. I mean, for crying out loud, look at all the freaking courts within the U.S. freeing people who are clearly guilty of murder simply because they're black. And they're all Democrat socialists. You lying about what other people think or what their opinions are just makes you a bigger liar with every post. I don't really have to prove that you're a liar. I can just say it because I live in an echo chamber and everyone loves to suck my big, meaty, small 1-inch cock. In turn, people just assume that everything you post is just another lie. Because why would we agree with anyone that doesn't agree with white nationalist Christianity? Pish posh. And then he responds again, not too long after. Quote tweet. You would justify the rape of virgin women because the value of a virgin woman is worth 30 shekels of silver. And again, he's taking it out of context. So let me explain this one. I explained to him, considering he's a socialist, right? And I understand socialism. So under socialism, a socialist would look at this and go that the rapist shouldn't owe the father anything for raping his virgin daughter, because that would be a form of capitalism. And the argument would be is that by giving the daughter's father recompense, financial recompense, you're valuing or you're putting value or you're dehumanizing the woman and saying that the woman is nothing more than a product. And because that's a form of dehumanizing women, the rapist shouldn't pay the father, the daughter's father, recompense for raping the daughter. Therefore, the rapist should be freed. Well, what if the rapist, right, does not have 30 shekels of silver? What if he's broke? Well, then that person has to be a slave, right? Because he can't pay the father back, right? So he has to work for the father to pay back what he took from the father's ownership, which you're clearly against. All you're against the idea of quote unquote indentured servitude, which you call slavery. You're against the idea of people using their private property as a safe haven and call that slavery. And then you'll probably say, well, what is the 30 shekels for? You know, the 30 shekels is to feed not only to recompense the daughter and the father, it's also to feed the child in case that the woman does end up getting pregnant and giving birth to the rapist's baby. And then more than likely you'll say, but why would you allow the rapist's baby to exist? Isn't that kind of evil for you to be forcing a woman to give birth to a rapist's child? Here's a better question. Why do you not kill the rapist as opposed to sparing the child that had nothing to do with this? Why is your first instinct is to spare the person who violated someone's bodily autonomy and to kill the person whose bodily autonomy is being violated by you and has a clean slate, born free of sin? Now, what does that sound like? That sounds like the modern talking point, Democrat talking point for abortion. I'm not putting words in your mouth. This is literally what your side says. And then he replies, quote tweet again, okay, so by your admission, a person who is against slavery, who is outnumbered, and is using their property as a safe haven for slaves and treating them fairly is the bad guy. And he responds, I'm saying that all-powerful God that would actually condone slavery when he had the power to make it disappear is evil. Evil! Okay, so remember what I said. There is context that he is removing, right? And what is that context? The context of that time is slavery was normalized across the globe, right? So effectively, what Holger here is saying is, why didn't God genocide the entire world? His literal argument is God is evil because he didn't kill the entire population of humans. That is literally his argument. Guys, this isn't an atheist channel, by the way. The atheist is upset that God didn't do what he deems is a good thing and then genocide the entire human population. I stand corrected, atheist socialist. Imagine claiming yourself as the hero, claiming that God is the bad guy, but for some reason your stance is, if God isn't the bad guy, why didn't he just kill all the bad guys on the planet? Are you stupid? Are you really stupid? If you do value your life, I would suggest you getting some help, because you clearly do need some help, but I surely you need fucking help, bro. You need fucking help. The statements that you've been making in that thread this entire time is contradictory at best, and you are clearly pissed off for existing because you wanted God to kill off everybody so you wouldn't have to exist. Again, people, atheism and socialism is somehow supposed to save us. I mean, if you're a suicidal maniac, then yeah, it'll save you. But if you're not a suicidal maniac, you value your life, you value the gift God gave you, then these people are fucking maniacs. Now, remember our best friend here, Mr. Daniel Kaiser, 4174. Remember back then when he said he would stand against the Nazis? He would fight them tooth and nail. Explain to me why said hero here is quite literally teaming up with the Nazi who clearly is espousing Nazi talking points. Listen here. Every single, and this is a message to every person on the left, every single last one of you who have said this cockamamie bullshit of standing against the Nazis, and then unironically actually, standing side by side by Nazi talking points and not calling it out and siding with them because you've fallen into the dialectic and cursed the spiritual Christianity while hugging and accepting the earthly Christianity. Fuck you, all right? Because here's the thing, right? How many people on the left has debated Nick Fuentes ever since he's falling in the mainstream? Zero, right? Okay. How many people has the left have been calling Nazis been debating Nick Fuentes ever since he's became mainstream? Steven Crowder, that's one. Ben Shapiro, that's two. A lot of other Jewish people that I have never heard of, that's a lot. I'll add plus 10 on that one. And yet, and there's that Piers Morgan interview, and a lot of people are like, well, he's a leftist. No, he's not. He literally, most of you motherfuckers call him a goddamn right winger. When he stands against Muslims and Islam, you call him Islamophobic. So fuck you. And then he's making claims talking about I'm beating my slaves if they don't die within 3 days according to the Bible. Notice how they make these claims, but they don't give the source or the quote of where the fuck they're getting it from. They're just making the claim and then go, believe me, bro, because, well, I've read it. I don't have to show you because you've read it too. So if I read it and you read it, I don't have to really show anything. I could just say whatever the hell I want. And it goes a lot longer than that. Trust me. I mean, the fucking thread is about, like, what, 67 fucking replies of them running their fucking mouths, making declarations of debate fallacies without proving what the fucking fallacy is. It gets a lot crazier than that, people. Like, these people generally are neo-Nazis. Those two accounts, those are neo-Nazi accounts. I'm not saying that as, oh, I'm not getting in my way and they're not listening to me and I'm just labeling them as something because I don't get my way. No. This is we went through the responses. We went through the thread. These people are actual genuine neo-Nazis. And they have the audacity to look you square in the fucking face and say, no, no, you're the Nazi. Yeah. Yeah, it's clearly you, not me. The person that doesn't believe in the spiritual sense, the guy that actually condemns the Bible, but at the same time claims God as his own property, as political property, simply because, you value the power more than the book itself. No, that doesn't make you a Nazi. But me accepting the Bible, no, that makes me the Nazi somehow. Me accepting and declaring the fact that Jesus Christ is quite literally the descendant of Abraham, the descendant of Jews, the descendant of Israelites. Somehow I'm the Nazi. But you, the person that rejects all this, the person that justifies rape, the person that justifies slavery under the guise of being against it, somehow you're not the Nazi. Funny how that works. Well, that was a fun video to make. It was like, what, 43 minutes of all those screenshots of me, like, debunking every little fucking thing that they fucking said. They said a lot more, but it was a lot of, like, regurgitating the same point, but just saying the exact same thing. So I didn't include those into the video, because if I did, this shit would have been, like, 2 hours long. So, yeah, that was a very interesting dilemma. It was very entertaining, by the way. I actually like talking to people like that, because it actually goes to show you that I'm not the crazy one, and they are. Yet, for some reason, the people that say atheism is the way to life, atheism, we need to ditch God and accept atheism or Marxism or socialism or national socialism or white ethno-nationalism or white Christian nationalism or communism. These people, for some particular reason, they get pissed off when you show up in their echo chambers, but then they get pissed off showing up in your area, wondering why you're not in their echo chambers. This is Yoshi the Oreo, telling you to stay alive, stay free thinking, and don't let these people drive you to the point of insanity. Because once you go down that path, you're going to start agreeing with them. Until then, take care, be safe. God bless.